everyone, welcome back to development of heart. So here in this session we are going to see about development of various chambers of heart. So in previous session we have seen the formation of heart tube and fate of derivatives of each part of the heart tube, and also the looping of the heart and how the various parts of the heart form, and even the pericardial sinus, fate of pericardial sinus and associated congenital anomalies. So these were discussed in previous session. In today's session we are going to see how each chamber of the heart is developed. So here we can see an image of a normal heart showing the 4 chambers. So we can see 4 chambers. So the primitive heart tube has a single lumen, and this lumen is partitioned by 4 definitive chambers to formation by 4 septa. So these septa are like atrioventricular septum. So this is the atrioventricular septum which separates the atria from the ventricles. So here is the atrioventricular septum which has two openings in each side, which are guarded by tricuspid and mitral valve or bicuspid valve. Interatrial septum, this is the interatrial septum which separates the right and left atria. Third one is interventricular septum which separates right and left ventricles. Then aorticopulmonary septum which separates the aorta from the pulmonary trunk. So in addition to the formation of the septa, that other embryological events such as regression and absorption of sinus venosus into the right atrium and absorption of pulmonary veins into the left atrium, these events are also important in the formation of definitive chambers of heart. So today's session is regarding development of atria, atrioventricular septum, and then interatrial septum with associated clinical aspects. So let's begin with the formation of atrioventricular septum. So we know the primitive heart tube has got the primitive ventricle and primitive atria. So the septum which separates the primitive ventricle and the primitive atria is otherwise called as atrioventricular septum. So this is the primitive atrium. This is the primitive atrium, and the lower one is the primitive ventricle. This is a schematic image for us to understand. And here is the dorsal AV cushion, atrioventricular cushion, and this one is the ventral AV cushion. So the atrioventricular septum divides the atrioventricular canal into right and left halves. So the canal what you are seeing here in between, communicating between the atria and ventricles, it divides into right and left parts by by this atrioventricular cushions. So AV septum is formed by the fusion of AV cushions, and the two thickenings appear, one on the dorsal wall which is called as dorsal AV cushion or atrioventricular cushion. The other appears on the ventral wall which is termed as ventral AV cushion. And these are called atrioventricular cushions, which are otherwise called as endocardial cushions of or AV cushions. So you can say it as AV cushions, we can say it as endocardial cushions or atrioventricular cushions. So these cushions, we can see they start growing here in this image. So this is the primitive atrium, here is the primitive ventricle, and we can see the AV cushions starts approximating with each other, approaching each other, and they grow towards each other and fuse together to form AV septum or atrioventricular septum, which is otherwise called as septum intermedium. So this divides the AV canal. This is from a sagittal section, and this is from above, horizontal section. So if you see the horizontal section, this is the AV septum which is formed here, which is dividing into AV canal into right and left parts. So this is the primitive ventricle, this is primitive atria. So this is the right AV valve and this one is the left AV valve, and in between is the AV cushion. So that was about the development of atrioventricular septum. Let us continue with the formation of interatrial septum. Interatrial septum divides the primitive atrium into right and left atria. It is interatrial septum has formed by two septum which are called as septum primum and septum secundum. So what you are seeing in the schematic image, this side is the right atrium, primitive atrium it is. All four images are primitive atrium. This is the sinoatrial orifice, which is the communication with sinus venosus and primitive atrium. Here is the septum primum. This is the right and this is the left atrium. Septum primum, it grows down here towards AV cushion. This is the AV cushion. This one is the AV cushion. So this communication is called as foramen primum. So between the right and left atria, the initial communication which is separated by initial septum which is called septum primum. So this is the septum primum. So this communication is called as foramen primum. So septum primum starts developing from the roof of the primitive atrial chamber, little to the left of the opening of sinus venosus. We can see the opening of sinus venosus, and it is this sinus venosus, it is crescentric in shape, present in oblique plane, it is not straight, and it grows downwards towards the septum intermedium. So you can see the septum primum, it grows downwards towards the septum intermedium or AV cushion or AV septum. So the gap between the lower edge of the septum primum and the AV cushion is called as foramen primum. And as the septum fuses with the AV septum, you can see the septum primum is fused here in the third image with the AV cushion. So this is the AV septum, this is septum primum which is fused now. So after fusing, what happens? The upper part of the septum primum breaks down. So you can see it breaks down, developing a communication which is called as foramen secundum. This communication is called as foramen secundum. So which is otherwise called ostium secundum as well. So the second crescentric shaped septum now arises from the roof of the primitive atrial chamber immediately to the right of septum primum. So this is the site where the septum primum had formed. So just right towards it we can see one more septum growing downwards, that is called as septum secundum. So this is septum secundum, here it is. So it is this foramen is foramen secundum, we know, otherwise called ostium secundum. So the septum secundum grows downwards towards the septum primum, and that is towards the AV cushion, and it overlaps the foramen secundum. So this one, it grows down and it obliquely overlaps, making this opening an oblique passage. It is not a direct passage now. So which acts like a valve, and this foramen is called as foramen ovale. It is called as foramen ovale. So this forms an oblique valvular passage between the upper margin of the septum primum and lower margin of septum secundum. This passage is foramen ovale or ostium ovale. So the interatrial septum is thus formed by two septa, septum primum that forms in the lower part of interatrial septum, septum secundum which forms the upper part of interatrial septum. Later, just at the time of birth or immediately after birth, this septum secundum and primum, they approximate with each other, they approach with each other and completely they fuse, closing this foramen ovale. So let us discuss about the functional mechanism of foramen ovale. So the foramen ovale acts like a one-way valve from right to left. So from the right to left, you can see persistence of foramen ovale from right to left. Septum primum, it is a thin and mobile like flap, while the septum secundum is quite thicker and firm. So when blood accumulates in the right atrium, it pushes the septum primum towards the left and the foramen ovale opens. So the blood flow from right atrium to the left atrium. When the blood flows from the right to the left atrium, the thin flap of septum primum moves away and there is no obstruction of the blood flow. But after birth, the left atrium receives the blood from the lungs, which is an oxygenated blood, and pressure within which it becomes greater than that in the right atrium. So as the pressure of the blood in the left atrium increases, it pushes the septum primum and towards the septum secundum to the right, and it comes in opposition with septum secundum, and the foramen ovale is closed, that is called physiological closure, and thus the blood is prevented from flowing from left atrium to right atrium. In adults, the foramen ovale represents fossa ovalis. So fossa ovalis represents actually septum primum, and annulus ovalis, that is the margin of it, annulus fossa ovalis or limbus fossa ovalis, prominent horseshoe shaped margin of fossa ovalis it is, which represents the edges of fetal septum secundum. So that is, and suppose if there is any atrial septal defect, there can be chance of persistent foramen ovale even after birth. So that causes an abnormal circulation from right atrium to the left atrium. So there will be mixture of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood in the body, resulting in incompetency of blood. So it can't meet the demands, oxygen demands of the tissues. So initially the patient will be asymptomatic, but later when he grows up, when the physical activity is more in the child, that time they will start feeling exhausting very soon. So they get exhausted very soon. So that time it is usually discovered that there is a persistent foramen ovale. So atrial septal defect shunts the blood from the left atrium to the right atrium because of the hypertrophy of the right atrium, right ventricle and the pulmonary trunk. Mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood occurs, producing cyanosis. So there are basically two types of atrial septal defects. In ostium primum atrial septal defects, ostium secundum type of atrial septal defects, and premature closure of foramen ovale, early closure of foramen ovale. So we can see septum secundum, this is one, and this is septum primum. This oblique passage is the foramen ovale. So if there is a problem in the yellow one, yellow colored, that is septum secundum, ostium secundum. You can see in the red septum there is a breakage, that is ostium primum type. So ostium primum type atrial septal defect, the blood keep flowing from left atrium to the right atrium through foramen ostium or foramen primum, and in this condition the septum primum fails to fuse with the endocardial cushions, and the defect is immediately above the atrioventricular boundary. May also be associated with ventral septal defect as well. It is less common than ostium secundum type, that is secundum atrial septal defect. So ostium secundum type is the most common atrial septal defect, and if the septum secundum is too short to cover the foramen secundum, it allows the shunting of blood from left to right atria and through foramen ostium or foramen secundum. So it is caused by either an excessive reabsorption of septum secundum or that is resulting a large foramen secundum, or an underdevelopment or reduced size of septum secundum resulting a large foramen ovale. The third condition we can see here, premature closure of foramen ovale. In this condition, the closure of the foramen ovale occurs during prenatal life, and this results in a massive hypertrophy of right side of the heart and underdevelopment of the left side of heart. So that is about premature closure of foramen ovale. Now let us discuss about the sinus venosus. So the caudal end of the heart tube, sinus venosus, which gets absorbed into the posterior part of the heart because of cardiac looping, and once it starts getting absorbed, mainly it gets absorbed into the right atrium of the heart. So we shall discuss about the regression of the sinus venosus. So we know the sinus venosus has got the right and left horns. This is the primitive atrium, the green one. This is the body of sinus venosus. So this opening is initially transverse, which is the sinoatrial orifice, which is shown here in this image. This is the right horn of sinus venosus, left horn of sinus venosus, receiving common cardinal veins, umbilical veins and vitelline veins. So at first, the sinus venosus consists of small transverse part which is called as body and two horns, right and left horns. The first the sinus venosus and the primitive atrium are in open communication with each other, and the communication will form sinoatrial orifice. This communication is called as sinoatrial orifice between the sinus venosus and primitive atrium. It is transverse and located in the middle of the posterior aspect of atrial chamber, and it has two horns of equal size in the beginning. And because the left to right, because the shunting of blood is from left to right in the developing heart, so between pulmonary veins, most of the blood is drained into the right horn of sinus venosus, so which therefore increases in size. So the right horn will increase in size. Common cardinal vein, umbilical vein, vitelline veins, and we can see the regression of left horn and increase of right horn. So this is the right horn increasing, can see, and we can see the communication is most towards the right, separating it from the left. Now the sinoatrial orifice will be almost, instead of transverse, we can see it is almost like vertical like. So therefore because of these changes, the opening of the sinus venosus into the atrium, it shifts towards the right and it becomes vertical opening. And this sinoatrial orifice, it is guarded by valves which are called as right and left venous valves, because that is the venous end, so it is guarded by right and left venous valves. The upper ends of the two valves, they fuse to form septum spurium. So you can see now this opening is constricted. This is the sinus venosus and atrial opening, and this becomes an oblique here, and here we can see approximation to form septum spurium. So the sinoatrial orifice becomes narrow and it is guarded by right and left venous valves. And right horn of sinus venosus receives all the venous blood through superior and inferior vena cava, whereas the left horn becomes only the coronary sinus. It becomes regressed and becomes only the coronary sinus. So left horn is converted into coronary sinus. This is the right venous valve, left venous valve, sinoatrial orifice in between, the gap between, and this is the septum spurium, which is formed by the fusion of right and left venous valves. So that was about the formation of sinus venosus, how the two horns, left will starts regressing and right becomes bigger. Now we will see what happens to the right horn of sinus venosus. So absorption of sinus venosus into the right atrium. So after the formation of interatrial septum, the right horn, that is the body of the sinus venosus, is absorbed into the right atrium. You can see the blue colored one is the sinus venosus, the pink color one, this one is the primitive atrium. This is the primitive atrium, this is the sinus venosus. So it gets absorbed into the right atrium, the sinus venosus, and so that the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava and coronary sinus, which is the regressed part of left horn, now open into the right atrium. They start opening into the right atrium, and with the absorption of sinus venosus into the right atrium, the right and left venous valves separate from each other. The right, they will get widened open, and the right venous valve grows enormously to form crista terminalis, which separates the anterior rough part of adult atrium and posteriorly smooth part. So anterior rough part is from primitive atrium, that is from this pink color, and posterior rough part is from the sinus venosus. Posterior smooth part is from sinus venosus, that is from this blue color. So the one which separates here, this forms the crista terminalis, which gets absorbed from the sinus venosus. So that is formed from the right venous valve. So the right venous valve from the crista terminalis. And the left venous valve, it gets absorbed into interatrial septum. It forms a little part of interatrial septum. So after getting absorbed, this is the superior vena cava, inferior vena cava and coronary sinus. This is from above. If you see the right atrium from above, it is. So here I am discussing, this is the right venous valve, this is the left. You can see the right venous valve grows enormously, and whereas the left venous valve becomes smaller in size. So this image is mainly to show the fate of right and left venous valves. So the left venous valve is along the septum spurium, fuses with the interatrial septum. It forms a part of interatrial septum, whereas the right venous valve, it gets greatly stretched out and subdivided into three parts by formation of two muscular bands, the superior and inferior limbic bands they are called, and the three parts are from above downwards. It forms crista terminalis, which I already said just before. Crista terminalis separates the anterior smooth rough part, that is primitive atrium, from posterior smooth part, sinus venosus. So this gets stretched enormously, and it also forms the valve of inferior vena cava. Here is the opening, so it forms the valve of inferior vena cava, and upper part forms the valve of superior vena cava, and inferior most part, it forms the valve of coronary sinus. We can see valve of superior vena cava, valve of inferior vena cava, valve of coronary sinus, crista terminalis. I am sorry, actually it is valve of inferior vena cava, coronary sinus, and it forms crista terminalis. Only these three parts it forms, not with the coronary sinus. So this is the fate of right and left venous valves. So let us discuss about the development of left atrium, absorption of pulmonary veins into the left atrium. So we can see how the pulmonary veins, initially the single one. So initially a single large pulmonary veins open into the left atrium, and it then divides into right and left pulmonary veins. And each of the right and left pulmonary veins further divides into branches, we can see, further divides into branches and before entering the corresponding lung. In this way, the four pulmonary veins are formed. So gradually the parts of the pulmonary veins nearest to the atrium gets absorbed into the atrium. So you can see it gets absorbed, separating the branches. So finally the terminal branches gets absorbed here, forming right two and left two pulmonary veins. So gradually the parts of the pulmonary veins nearest to the atrium, they get absorbed into the atrium, that is left atrium. As a result, the four separate veins, two from each side, open into the left atrium. So the large smooth or posterior part of the left atrium is derived from the absorbed part of pulmonary veins, while the small rough part of primitive, that is anterior part of the left atrium, is derived from the primitive atrium proper. In short, to say, large smooth part and posterior smooth part of left atrium derived from pulmonary veins, and small rough anterior part derived from the primitive atrium or atrium proper. So we will see the right auricle, right atrium of the adult component is from the primitive atrium in the right half. The smooth part behind the crista terminalis is from sinus venosus. Crista terminalis is the left venous valve. Crista terminalis forms the valve of inferior vena cava and valve of coronary sinus. These three components are from right venous valve. And most ventral smooth part is from right half of atrioventricular canal. So these are the adult components and embryonic derivatives. That was upon the right atrium. Left atrium, posterior smooth part, that is between the openings of pulmonary veins, is absorption of pulmonary veins near atria, and anterior rough part and left auricle derived from the left half of primitive atrium. Most ventral smooth part is from left half of atrioventricular canal. So now let us discuss about the septa forming between right and left ventricles. So we finished about the atria now, and we finished about the interatrial septum as well. So continuing with the partition of the primitive ventricle. So the interventricular septum consists of three parts. You can see three colors here, three parts. Lower one is the muscular part, then bulbar part, the upper one is the bulbar part. In between these two we can see the membranous part. So these three parts develop from three different sources. The muscular part of interventricular septum develops as an outgrowth of muscular wall in the floor of primitive ventricle. So the floor of primitive ventricle, it forms a muscular outgrowth forming this muscular part. It is the median muscular ridge grows upwards from the floor of primitive ventricle near its apex and grows towards the atrioventricular septum, but it stops to create the interventricular foramen in the beginning, leaving septum incomplete. And in the, it is like a present in, if you see in the oblique plane, it reaches almost up to the AV cushions, but its upper margins are concave, leaving a gap. So the bulbar part develops from the right and left bulbar ridges. This bulbar part is from right and left bulbar ridges, from the conical part of common ventricular chamber, and the two ridges, the right and left bulbar ridges, develop in the distal part of bulbar cordis, that is here, that is the atrial's end, and they grow and approach each other, fusing each other to form bulbar part of IV septum. The gap between them, the margins of the muscular septum and the lower margin of the bulbar septum, is called interventricular foramen. This part is the interventricular foramen in the beginning, and eventually a membranous part will develop, filling up this gap. So the membranous part, that is interventricular septum, closes the interventricular foramen, completing the partitions of ventricles. So the gap between the upper edge of the muscular part of interventricular septum and lower end of the bulbar part of interventricular septum is filled by the proliferation of right side of AV cushions and form the right and left bulbar ridges. So thus the membranous part is derived from three sources. So this part is derived from three sources. Note down these three sources: the right bulbar ridge, that is the right conus swelling, and the left bulbar ridge, that is the left conus swelling, and inferior endocardial atrioventricular cushion. Once the right and left ventricles are formed and the proximal part of bulbus cordis becomes incorporated into the right ventricles as conus arteriosus or infundibulum, and it also gets incorporated into the left ventricle as aortic vestibule. So this completes a summary about the development of interventricular septum. So basic concept is three sources: muscular part, membranous part, bulbar part. So let's see the adult components in the development of ventricles. Left ventricle inflow rough part is from primitive ventricle. Outflow smooth part is from bulbus cordis. Right ventricle inflow rough part is from primitive ventricle. Outflow smooth part, that is the aortic vestibule, is from bulbus cordis. So the septal defect, ventricular septal defect. So interventricular septum is formed by the fusion of bulbar ridges with endocardial cushion, then aorticopulmonary septum and muscular part of interventricular septum. If these three components fails to fuse, it may result in an opening in interventricular foramen, and it occurs commonly on the membranous part of interventricular foramen. So which leads to interventricular ventricular septal defect, VSD. So which increases the blood flow to the lungs and causes the pulmonary hypertension and congestive heart failure. So it commonly occurs in the bulbar part of interventricular septum. Interventricular septum formed by the fusion of bulbar ridges, endocardial cushion, aorticopulmonary septum and muscular part of interventricular septum. This point to be noted. Next, about the Fallet's tetralogy, that is 4 abnormalities in the development of heart. So it is otherwise called tetralogy of Fallet, and this condition occurs due to the combination of 4 cardiac anomalies. One is the pulmonary stenosis. You can see narrowing of the pulmonary trunk is called pulmonary stenosis. Then overriding of aorta, displacement of aorta, of aortic orifice to the right of the to the right it gets overrided. To override interventricular septum, it gets overrided, and then VSD, that is ventricular septal defect, where we can see mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood here. So, and hypertrophy, because of mixing, hypertrophy of the right ventricle will be observed. So the result, right to left shunting of blood leads to cyanosis, and Fallet's tetralogy is the commonest congenital cyanotic heart disease. So pulmonary stenosis, overriding of aorta, that is displacement of aortic orifice to the right to override the interventricular septum, and VSD, ventricular septal defect, hypertrophy of right ventricle. Next, pentology of Fallot. There is one more anomaly associated, is the atrial septal defect. So ventricular septal defect, stenosis of pulmonary trunk, right ventricular hypertrophy, overriding. These four is already seen in tetralogy, Fallot's tetralogy. So pentology means the atrial septal defect is also added. So pentology of Fallot is the variant, and more common is the tetralogy of Fallot, and along with the classic four features, with the addition atrial septal defect or patent ductus arteriosus is added. Next, about the development of aorticopulmonary septum, how the aorta and pulmonary trunks are separated. It is separated by a septum which is spirally twisted, so it is called as spiral septum. So the partition of truncus arteriosus and bulbus cordis, that is the septum is called as aorticopulmonary septum, which develops from truncal ridges and bulbar ridges derived from the neural crust cells of mesenchyme. So the neural crust cells derives to form aorticopulmonary septum. So mesenchymal cells derived from the neural crust cells that migrate in the walls of the truncus arteriosus near the conus grows in the spiral fashion, and you can see in this image how they grow. So the red one is the aorta and the blue one, so they get twisted here. And aorticopulmonary septation divides the truncus arteriosus into aorta on one side and pulmonary trunk on the other side. So during 5th week, the ridges of subendocardial tissue form bulbus cordis, so forming bulbar ridges. So similar ridges also form the truncal arteriosus, which are called as truncal ridges, and are continuous with those of bulbar ridges, and actively separates the aorta and pulmonary arteries, and fuse with interventricular septum within the heart, developing within the heart, like during the heart development. And the spiral orientation of the ridges results in a spiral aorticopulmonary septum. So when these ridges fuse, we can see the spiral formation of septum. So septum divides the bulbus cordis and truncus arteriosus into two channels. One is the aorta, the other is the pulmonary trunk. So blood from the aorta now passes into the third and fourth aortic arch arteries, and which later forms the arch of aorta, future aortic arch. And the blood from the pulmonary trunk flows into the sixth pair of aortic arch arteries, that is pharyngeal arch arteries, which forms future pulmonary arteries. Conus cushions divides the outflow tract regions of the aortic and pulmonary channels from the left and right ventricles respectively, together with the tissue from the inferior endocardial cushion close to interventricular foramen. So you can see the bulbar ridges, we can see the truncal ridges. They are not one above, they are spirally present, and growth of these ridges forms this spiral septum, the yellow one, spiral septum. So in the lower part we can see the aorta posterior, pulmonary trunk anterior. In the middle part we can see aorta and pulmonary trunk on each side. In the upper end we can see pulmonary trunk lies posterior and aorta lies posterior. So this is in the lower part, this is in the middle part, and here in the upper part. And arch of aorta is from the fourth arch arteries. Pulmonary trunk arch arteries are from right and left pulmonary arteries are from the sixth arch arteries. So the truncal ridges grows and fuse with each other to form spiral septum close to the conical part of the ventricle. Later this septum fuses with the interventricular septum as well and continues with the interventricular septum below. So that's how we can understand the relationship of the pulmonary trunk and the aorta with each other. Differs in the lower, middle and the upper parts. In the lower part, the spiral septum or bulbar septum are in the same plane and continuous with each other, and that is the coronal plane. We can see that it is in the coronal plane. As a result, the pulmonary trunk is in front and aorta is on the posterior aspect. And in the middle, the spiral septum is in sagittal way. So the aorta is towards the right and pulmonary trunk is towards the left. And in the upper part, the pulmonary septum is again in coronal plane, but the aorta here it lies anteriorly and pulmonary trunk posteriorly. So this completes the development of aorticopulmonary. So this completes the development of heart. Thank you.